3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody, we're live. Riz is playing Find Waldo today. See if you can find him.
Welcome to Habanos Saturday, the fastest growing cigar show on YouTube with over 100,000 subscribers. Come join us every Saturday live.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Habanos Saturday. Rizzo is playing Find Waldo. If you can figure out where he is, you win a
If you can
prize.
work out where I am from this background, this
you
is
go.
not like a graveyard show. This is a different show. But,
This is a different show today.
It's a different
There you
show.
go.
I don't think anyone will be able to find out where I am, right?
No,
But
I don't think so.
I'm out in the field, as they say. This is
He's
field
out in the
reporting.
field doing live reporting. And
Yeah.
let's just say good morning to Uris, who's saying, and by the way, we're going to have Uris back on because he's going to have to explain some stuff from the 70s and 80s when he was a rock star. But that's for another show.
When you say the 70s and 80s, you mean the 1970s and 90s?
Yes, not the 70s and 80s when I was around, as a vampire sucking blood out of people. I'm talking about the 1900s, not the year 70 and 80. That is true. Uris is going to be, I think, on in a couple of weeks. David Blanco is supposed to be showing up today. As we all know, he's a fifth-generator masturbator. And if he does show up, he is going to come on and talk to us about his cigar company as well as what's going on in Cuba. Now, Riz is only going to be here for about 10 or 15 minutes. So if David doesn't show up in the next 10 minutes or so, this is the show, guys.
So let me explain. Let me explain for you cigar aficionados out there, right? Okay. Basically, I'm on a bit of a cigar trip, yeah, and I am almost smack in the middle of France right now. Okay,
Right.
Maybe 100 miles outside of Bourges, which turns out to be a very charming little city where I stayed. Not even a city, a small town where I stayed yesterday evening. But we are on our way to Palamos, Spain, and we're driving it because we drive, right? We hit the road, Jack. But we're searching for hidden cigar spots, hidden cigar depots, places where Cuban cigars have been stored and no one else can access them. And where it's like a bit of a Pokemon trail. You know, when you collect Pokemon monsters, we collect cigar bonded warehouses.
There you go. And, or bondage, if that's what you're into. So there you go.
I guess, yeah.
There
This is the reason. This is a reason for me being a little bit left side on the show. I almost never miss the show.
That's true. That's true. Now, let me just do this before, Rizza, as people are trying to figure out where you are, even though you just told them, David Blanco is about to join us. So Rizza, we'll have you meet him. And then at some point, Rizza is going to disappear, everybody, because he's got to continue driving his rental car that he showed me, which we won't show on air. It's embarrassing. But it's a cute car for those people that have ever been to a circus. But
if you follow my Instagram, follow my Instagram, you might see little glimpses of places where I've stopped, little interesting things I see. So I'm not one of these 5-star VIP cigar connoisseurs that has to fly around the world. I find my cigar spots by actually walking the field or driving the field. I'm like that.
And you don't have to wear a fancy suit. Big shout out to Kirby Allison, who definitely enjoyed the short that we put out about him yesterday. So on our Instagram. Oh, no, I'm sure he didn't. Anyway, but I don't care. Now, David Blanco is going to join us, Rizza. And you can ask him questions because, like I said, he's a fifth-generation masturbator and blender. And I'm not sure what he learned first.
It seems like you have a very formal relationship with him and you can get away with it.
Well, he just sent me his bio 2 weeks ago when he was going to come on the show. And I read it.
That proves I'm in France.
Okay, let me just get a close-up here. There you go. He's in France, everybody. Hello. Parlez-vous français. Yes, there you go. Yes. So David did send me his bio. He's a fifth-generator master blender. He's going to tell us all about his cigars. And then we're going to talk about, and Rissa made me this part of the conversation, what's going on in Cuba with the Cuban government saying to everybody, hey, come write us a check and, buy stuff. So we're going to see how that goes as well. So let me bring David in before you disappear, Rizza. And there you go. David, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hi.
Good morning. Good morning from Blanco HQ.
Blanco HQ.
Good morning in France. Well, not so much in France. Not so much morning anymore, huh?
It's It's good afternoon. It's from bon après-midi de France. Je suis ici approximativement 100 kilomètres de Bourges et 300 kilomètres de Toulouse.
Oh,
Look
Did you
at
like
you.
that?
Speaking,
Do you like that? The Americans are
speaking
on, and they have the French
Portuguese.
here, etc.,
Yeah.
etc.
I do love the south of France this time of year.
Well, we're headed in that well. We're actually going to bypass it. I'm going to Palamos, Spain,
Oh,
which I've never
very
been
nice.
to. And then
Now you're
Barcelona.
speaking my language.
Well, there you go, sir. But Stephen had actually said it would be Benny Blanco from the Bronx.
Well, we tried, but Benny couldn't make it. So we got his cousin David. It's just the way it works out. It is what it is. So now remember, David was going to come on 2 weeks ago, but he had something with Giuliani and Giuliani got him sick. So we're not going to delve into that. But, Rudy. So there you go.
So this is the dedication that Stephen requires, David. Even though I'm driving through France, and even though I'm standing at a fucking petrol station, he insists I get on the show. And to be very honest with you, we've done shows even from. I had to go to a funeral, maybe
That's right.
3 or 4 months ago. I did a show from the funeral. So that's called being.
And the dead guy joined in, and it was great because a lot of dead people don't do well, but this dead guy, spectacular. Yeah. You don't see a lot of dead guys on cigar shows, so we were really happy about that. The first. You didn't realize you were coming onto a highbrow show, so welcome. So,
well, I'm glad I can bring this. It's highbrow, and I'm glad I can bring this to the next level.
You're going to bring it to some sort of a level. Now, just for the fans, just so you know, David and I are actually going to meet for the first time tomorrow with some mutual friends. Okay. David doesn't know, but he's buying lunch for everybody at Capitol Grill. So we're all excited about that. David just found out he's buying lunch. That's what Ben said. He said, David's buying lunch. I'm like, oh, I'm going.
That's hilarious because Ben said you were buying.
Well, Ben drinks a lot, just so we're clear. So there you have it. So there you go. So David, tell us about Blanco Cigars. I know some of the fans want to know that. I know most of the fans, because most of the fans smoke Cuban, and I know you're not a big fan of those. That'll be good for Rizza. And then I want to talk about what's going on in Cuba. About they want people to invest there now as well, because I know that's what I'm actually going to meet about tomorrow. But I think it'd be interesting for the fans to understand what's going on.
Sure. So Blanco Cigars actually started in Cuba, in Pinar del Rio, where my family is from, in 1886.
Wow.
Our family started growing tobacco. My grandmother was actually born in San Luis and kind of grew up with Alejandro Robaina. And that generation, they knew each other apparently, and unfortunately, as things went in the 59, 60 there, the whole revolution occurred. Everybody thought it was for the right reasons, but unfortunately, the devil we had was better than the devil we got, And the rest is history. My immediate family fled to the United States. The rest of my family got out shortly after. They went to Central America. But my immediate family came to the United States because Fidel attempted to assassinate my grandfather.
Oh, gosh.
He had no choice he didn't get a chance to pack a suitcase and all that stuff. He literally disguised himself. My father happened to be with him, visiting him, and they had to get on a boat and float off towards the Keys. With nothing but on their back in the middle of the night. And so the Coast Guard picked him up, brought him to a CIA safe house once he arrived, because they then questioned my grandfather, found out that he was a high-ranking official in the revolutionary new Republican government, and he was protected there. He immediately called his wife, who was in Havana still with his other son, and then he said, "Hey, I'm in Miami. I know you don't know that, but as soon as we hang up the phone, get on a plane and get out," because he was afraid they were going to come after her because they missed him. Right. And by the way, this was Raul and the death squads that were coming to kill my grandfather. So my grandmother hung up the phone, got on a plane. They hadn't shut off the planes yet. This is 61, and fled to Miami with her other son. So that's how my family came to the United States.
Wow, that's very cool.
There's an introduction and a half.
There you go. Right,
everything behind. to start a new life. They thought they'd be going back. My grandfather's actually involved in the planning of the Bay of Pigs.
Right.
Took part in the Bay of Pigs with my father, who was in his teens. But they were turned around. They were one of the waves that never made it in because, as history shows, that was a complete debacle, and the guys that did land were getting murdered and slaughtered. And
Right.
it was horrific. So they turned around, and then my grandfather said at that point, I guess we're staying here for a while. And for a while, it turned out to be the rest of his life. He never went back until he died here. My father is still alive. He's going to be almost 80.
God bless.
And he is going to see the freedom of the next revolution of Cuba, which is ongoing as we speak, believe it or not, without a shot, it looks like, which is wonderful to hear that. Anyway,
So
Blanco
then
then
on that very positive note, I'm going to make an exit of the program. There's plenty of interesting content over there. Over there.
Riza, really right down there. So Riza, safe travels. I will talk to you during the week. Best to I know who you're traveling with, so tell them not to smoke 3 cigars at once. And I will see you, whatchamacallit, I'll see you during the week, and I'll talk to you next Saturday. And all the fans send their safety with you.
Kisses.
God bless.
Miss you already. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
See ya. Love you, mean it. Yeah, I got it. See you later. Cheers. Well, David, it's just you and I, so I'm sorry for that. So there you
boy.
go. I know. We'll do a close. I know. Now that's it. It's the end of the show. Thanks, everybody. No. All right. So let's talk about what's going on in Cuba a little bit first.
Well, let me
and
tell
then
you a
get to
little
your
bit about.
scars.
I didn't get to the Blanco part, but because
Please.
it kind of segues in. So I grew up. My family went to Miami. I kind of, I wasn't around yet, right? So,
Right.
It wasn't until the Catholic Charities repositioned or helped place my family once they figured out they were staying. They moved into Chicago.
Okay.
If you haven't been able to hear by my accent, that's where I was born. So I popped out in Chicago, and I grew up as a Chicago kid. Baseball in the streets, stickball, and skitching and snowball fights. And Cuba was a family legacy that was lost to me. Right. I only heard about the stories. And in the 90s, as I became a young man, I've been dating myself now. You guys can figure out my age. Cigar aficionado popped up, right? And I was smoking cigars as a young man because it was my only connection to the family legacy that was lost to me.
Right.
My father was the 4th generation in the business, so he's the one that I was going to die with him. And as cigar aficionado occurred, it changed the landscape of the cigar industry and business in the United States. Think of the gentleman that owns that magazine As You Wish, but what he did do is revolutionize the industry. Whether he thought he was doing it or meant to do that is another story. But what happened was at cigar shops where you would just go buy a cigar, had a boom, had a renaissance, and people started, yuppies back then, as we were called, young people with money, your urban professionals, started getting interested in cigars because of the magazine. It was selling a lifestyle. That magazine was selling, fine watches, travel, luxury, high expensive scotches and things of that nature, and cigars. And the one thing that they could attain in that entire mess was the cigar, right? That was the affordable part. So they wanted to take part in that lifestyle. So they would go to these cigar shops, and these guys saw a boom in their industry. But at that time, they didn't really have places to smoke. They were cigar shops, maybe had a chair in it, but they were cases and not as many walk-in humidors as you think like we have today. So as their business grew, they realized we need a place for people to smoke the cigars that they're buying at our shops. We better make some seats and maybe put a TV on the wall and make it comfortable and luxurious like the magazine shows. This is the birth of the cigar lounge as we know it in the United States. Now, Europe is a little bit different story because it was older, traditional, things of that nature, but not here in the United States. There were very few clubs and locations that you could actually lounge in a luxurious atmosphere with leather chairs and sofas and things of that nature. But this was a renaissance of where the genesis of this current cigar lounge that you walk into all over the United States today, and you can sit and have a cigar. Now, that's evolved as well into cigar shops, cigar bars, and cigar clubs. But nonetheless, that was the renaissance. So when that occurred, I saw an opportunity because people came to me and said, "Hey, Dave, your family was from Cuba and they smoked cigars and you smoked cigars and they made cigars. teach us. I became the subject matter expert overnight. And when that happened, they started having me show them and teach them. And then it was, hey, well, we'll give you money. You go buy cigars. You know what you're talking about. We trust you. So you want me to go buy cigars for you? He goes, yeah, we'll buy them from you. Wait, you're going to buy cigars from me? Maybe there's an opportunity for me to resurrect family business. So I approached my father and I approached my uncle, and I simply said in the midnight, I said, listen, I think there's an opportunity for us to restart the family business that would otherwise be lost with your generation. I said, well, what do you have in mind? I said, I think, why don't we just start a factory? My uncle Francisco had already retired from the military in Tampa at that time. My father and I were still in Chicago. We could all be partners. He would run the factory. I would do the blending and the design of the product. My father would run all the business aspect of it, payroll, licenses, taxes, blah, 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 blah. And then I would go out and sell the product. So it was a three-headed monster at that time. And they said, well, if you invest everything you own, we'll back you. We'll become your partner. So I pushed all my chips in. And in 1998, we incorporated. I had done my due diligence for about a year and a half earlier. And we opened up the factory in 1998 in Ybor City, which was the old heart of the cigar industry. That lasted for about 2 years. Unfortunately, my uncle Francisco came down with MS as a result of exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam. And he got sick, and we had to close that factory. We then didn't know what to do because we had invested a ton of money in creating and building this factory. It was kitty corner. You're from down here, kitty corner from the Columbia restaurant.
Okay, I know exactly where it is. Yep.
And then we called up our cousins. My father called up our cousins in Nicaragua and said, hey, listen, Francisco's sick. He can't run the factory anymore. Can we move production down to your facility, since we were buying material from them anyway and rolling them here? And they said, absolutely, come on down. So we migrated down there in 2000s, where I actually got to start building and my relationship with my cousins, my long lost cousins they went from Cuba to Nicaragua to continue to grow and build farms and factories because they left in a little bit different manner because that's what they were doing when they left in Cuba. And that's the Plasencia family. That's
Sure.
So I have been working, and I met my mentor there. And when I arrived, his name was Oviedo Dominguez, one of the masters in the world. You'd like this. There's a little bit of knowledge for you, a novelty that not many people know. He was the union rolling president in Cuba, all the rollers, before the revolution. And he was head quality control roller and blender at the H. Upman factory before the revolution.
Nice.
He was the man, and his giving credit for blending. Here you go. The Monte Cristo number 4 and the Monte Cristo number 2.
Very nice. I had one of those on Wednesday night on number 2. So
this is the man who I called mentor, a teacher, and it was the one who I learned how to blend and learn my craft. I had him for over 11 years before he passed. I have him on my wall here in the office. I see him every morning.
Very nice.
And miss him dearly. So I thank him for everything. I credit 3 people for why I'm sitting here today talking to you. One is Avelio for teaching me the craft of blending. My father, of course, for being my partner. And then Nestor Plasencia Sr., who allowed me access to the facility and the tobacco and everything that I've been able to do. Because without that facility and the ungodly amount and variety of tobacco and quality of tobacco, I wouldn't be able to create what I do. So those are the 3 men. My uncle, unfortunately, passed a few months ago, finally, after 26 years of multiple sclerosis. So we also miss him, and it's a shame. But he paid the ultimate price for serving his country. But my father is going to see Cuba free, and so am I, and we look forward to that. I'm going to cut a cigar and get into this.
Please. Here on the yacht, we're not allowed to smoke. My captain tells me that there's something about jet fuel and explosions, and I just told him he's a pussy, and we're going to try it one day. But apparently,
I'm doing my coffee and my
there you go.
I've got my whole cafe cubano.
So tomorrow morning when we meet, we'll have cigars like gentlemen, and then we'll go to lunch and have cigars like gentlemen. And just for shits and giggles tomorrow, we'll have Ben treat, because he has short arms. All of a sudden, he has like little T-Rex arms when it comes to treating. He can't reach into his pocket. It's a crazy.
I've got one thing to say.
Yeah. There you go. Now, you have something that a lot of guys, guests have come on the show that don't. You've actually, and as most people know, I'm Jewish, so we'll use some Yiddish here. You've schlepped all over the world, and you've sold, human trafficking and drugs and cigars. I'm just kidding about the human trafficking. No. Anyway, he sold cigars all over the world.
So nicotine is a drug.
Not really. And cigars, stop it. Don't get going. We'll have everybody and their grandmother going, he's crazy. And there's only one crazy guy on the show, and he's wearing a baseball cap. But what's that like? I mean, because you had when you started your company, right? You have to get people to say, I want to carry your cigar. Now, you and I met kind of, sort of, when when Ben had met you, gave me one of your cigars, and I was smoking it. And just for jokes, I did that 30-second short, which we sent to you. And we actually put that out on Instagram and YouTube. We made fun of you and then told everybody which it is. Your cigars were excellent. So somewhere in our repertoire of stuff, there's that short. And I'm sure we'll do something tomorrow. But what's that like, starting your company literally from scratch, if you will, in the year 2000? Forgetting the magazine and forgetting cigar lounges, that really it does help you to, I'm sure, 2%. People still have to smoke your cigar. So how did you guys get it out to everybody?
Door-to-door salesman. I literally went to every cigar shop, first in Chicago, because I was still living in Chicago, and introduced myself, introduced the story that I mentioned to you, and the heritage and the legacy that I was trying to revive. The fact that I was a hometown guy in Chicago, and cigars were all the rage back then. People were very excited to buy what at the time was 1998 to 99, 2000. Very early days of boutique cigars.
Right.
Relatively speaking, there was General, Altadis, Fuente, Padron. I mean, Perdomo was young. I mean, those guys were all new. I mean, Rocky Patel started back then. Yep. I mean, we were all very new. So I was pretty much at the genesis of boutique brands. So it was first, there was excitement in the industry to smoke cigars, especially by younger people. Right. Secondly, it was something different than what they had been seeing on the shelves. The punches and the Olla de Monterreys and this was all the same stuff over and over and over. The Cohibas, it was all pretty much rote. It was nothing different. And we came up with something very different looking. We had bright colors. So it was eye-catching on the shelf. And I basically didn't sell cigars. I sold me. Right. Because I would come in and spend time and build relationships and do events. And I would introduce people to the family's legacy and brand.
Okay. Right.
The cigars were the representation of that. So that's how our marketing and advertising started. And then, of course, I did it in Tampa. And then I started going all over because my family was also down here. And we had a foothold here. And, of course, this is a large, even back then, it was a decent sized smoking community. Right. And then I started traveling around the country. I hired reps after our trade show. Our first trade show was 2000. And that was here in Tampa, believe it or not. That was the last time that what is now known as the PCA actually had the trade show here in Tampa, which is astounding to me that they haven't had it since. But so this will be my 26th show out of 28 years in the business for the trade show here in the United States. Of course, I do the show in Europe as well, in Dortmund. We've taken a few years on and off throughout the years, but COVID, of course.
Rizzo was at the Dortmund show last year in October.
I was not. I was not there last year.
You guys would have met.
What's that?
I said if you could have met if you would have gone. He was there,
and I plan on going again this year and catching a Dortmund game I say Dortmund across the street. You're familiar. They have the soccer. I usually go there.
They have football across the street.
Game. Right.
They have football across the street. Say
football, soccer.
We don't have to Americanize it. It's football. The rest of the world knows it is football. Say football. our audience is global. So
That's right.
the 4 people in America that are watching this, they can figure out what you mean when you say you're going to go watch football in Dortmund. First of all, most of them don't even know where that is. They won't know it's in. So we're going to help them. It's in Germany. So
just east of Dusseldorf.
Right. So, and that's a friendly place for Jews. They have ovens. Anyway, so it's one of these fun things. So yes, it's a football, and the rest of the world that's watching goes, "Oh yeah, football." You say soccer, they're like, "Soccer? What is?"
I forget my audience is international.
Yeah, we're a very international show. Most of the people watches it. Yeah, there you go. So anyway, so that'll be fun. So you sold this, and now you have this mega brand. And so are you now? And this is me just not knowing. Would you consider your brand then small batch, or do you consider your brand and like a Padron or a Fuentes, which we're going to produce 12,000 million cigars a day and get them out because we advertise in Cigar Fisher magazine as well as Rob Report and every other magazine we can get ourselves in? Or are you more small batch, like the Winds of My Daughter type cigar, which is an excellent cigar? You can smoke it. I enjoy it. And it's made with more love than it's made for profit.
So no, this is definitely my livelihood.
Okay.
So it's more than a passion, although it started as a passion. The hope and desire was to have it become my livelihood and carry on the legacy of my family. So I didn't, by the way, do this job full time for the first 5 years.
Okay.
So it was a part-time that slowly was able to take over. And then I had to make a decision in my career was, do I continue with my career and profession that I had gone to school for, or do I let that go and now able to build the cigar company the way I wanted to? So I chose the cigar company for a myriad of reasons. But I would consider myself still boutique, but this is by no means a small adventure or a small venture. I'm sitting in a 5,000 square foot space, a U.S. Customs bonded facility.
Okay.
I heard him talking about bonded facilities before. We are a bonded facility here. One of very few, by the way. Not many manufacturers are bonded.
Okay.
We do that for a myriad of reasons. International shipping we are able to do here and also from the factory. So it gives me a little more flexibility. It also helps me out with cash flow with regard to federal excise tax, what we used to call FDA as well, things of that nature. Right. And it also allows me to help other smaller companies that are truly boutique who do this for more of a passion and of a hobby, or just because they love it. And they may want to grow it someday. So I actually do a lot of service oriented back end logistics for a lot of other companies. But I make cigars for about 12 other companies other than my own.
Very nice.
I'm a blender for other companies. So we do a lot of not only manufacturing, but importing, warehousing, pick, pack, ship, a lot of other services that we provide for other smaller companies, as you mentioned, that it's cheaper and more advantageous for me to do it than for themselves. So pick up that as well.
So let me ask you this, and this I'm saying this somewhat tongue in cheek, because like I said, Ben drinks a lot and he's got short little arms. So he said that because we were talking about Cuban cigars yesterday together, because I was telling him about when I was at Capitol Grill and I was smoking cigars, and these people came over and gave us cigars and whatnot. And I said, oh yeah, he goes, David hates Cuban cigars. I'm like, oh really? I said, well, we're gonna have to talk about that. But then I'm like, that's why I'm saying it tongue in cheek. He likes to instigate. So I'm like, so I'm assuming you don't hate them, but like, now Rizza's on. Rizza will say anything that's non-Cuban, everything that's Cuban is great. Everything non-Cuban is crap. But he's only non-Cuban he smokes is Davidoff. That's because the check's clear every week. So compare yours, because I know it's just hard when I'll say to someone that it has manufacturing a non-Cuban, compare yours to a Cuban. Like, Cuban cigar people are going to be like, it's not the soil. It's not that. Calm down. At the end of the day, it's a cigar. I mean, and as Rizza likes to say, it's a dried leaf. And so some dried leaves are better. There's some cigars I've had that are non-Cuban, made by some people that you have mentioned on the show. The worst cigars I've ever had. And there's others like yours who I did not know until Ben gave it to me like a month or 2 or 3 ago. And I was like, this is a phenomenal smoke. And we know the J.C. Newman has the Tampa brand. It's a Florida tobacco. It's a great smoke. But if I gave it to Rizza, he'd be like, this is crap. It's no good. And I will say this is the same guy that when Anna Lopez gave him the Year of the Snake last year, She told him there was lavender in it, and he kept telling her he could smell and taste the lavender until she told him 6 months later she was pulling his leg. So, I don't know what he really knows about it. He's an aficionado, but I think easily swayed. So tell me yours compared to a Cuban for the people that watch that are very much into Cuban cigars.
Let me first clarify my statement so everybody understands what I said versus what he says I said.
Right.
What I said to him was that at the end of the day, I believe Cubans make the best cigars in the world.
Right.
From Nicaragua, Honduras, and the Dominican Republic.
Okay, good. Very good. Yeah, he's buying tomorrow. He's buying. Get those little T-Rex arms moving. So.
So the issue is not that Cuban cigars are better or worse or anything else, as we all know, and we joke about this left and right. And I know a lot of your viewers are from Europe and from other parts of the world, so it's very Cuban centric. But the reality is, it's very subjective. It's like Scotch, wine, bourbon, or anything else. If that's what you like, then that's what you like. There's no debating it. It's what you like. So having said that, the reason that Nicaragua, in particular, Esteli, is the center of the universe right now for the cigar production in the world. There are more cigars coming out of Esteli, Nicaragua than Havana, by far. And there's a reason for that. So let me explain the reason, then you guys can come to your own conclusions with regard to who's got better this or better that. And again, like I said, there's no winning this argument because it's all what you believe and what you like. But the reality is that our family has been there since 1962. My cousins got there in 1962. Before they were there, the Padrones were there, just by a little bit. And then after my family got there, the Plasencias, the Olivas came and many others. And before any of them were there, Olla de Nicaragua was there. Okay. So that being said, it was like the New World. You know how they call it, called the New World cigar is anything other than Cuba? It truly was. Nicaragua was unknown entity with regard to tobacco and growing, other than the small stuff that they did there. So the Cubans that landed, that were in Cuba for generations, perfecting the tobacco growing techniques that rendered the wonderful best cigars in the world, even at that time seen as the best cigars in the world, the experts came to Nicaragua. It took them many years to figure out and to perfect what they did in Cuba and into Nicaragua, because the soil was different, the elevation was different, the rainfall was different, the pestilence was different, the humidity levels were different. And Cuba, by the way, Cuba grows in certain regions. Nicaragua has a much vast and larger area to grow in different areas that render different products that not necessarily are the same in Cuba, by the way.
Okay.
So as a result, we can grow, there's 4 major growing regions and 2 minor growing regions in Nicaragua that I could plant the same Habano, let's say Habano plant, and I can pick them and taste them from all over the country, and they all taste different because of the soil. Remember, Nicaragua has 18 volcanoes, 8 of which are active. So it's like natural miracle grow. All right. You should see the vegetables and things down there. It's insane. The food. That's why coffee is very prevalent down there. And it's an agrarian society because they have this such fertile soil. By the way, Honduras as well. It's in the rim, right, with the volcanoes. So, but what happened is that even the Plasencias, they almost lost everything a couple of times because blue mold got them. Because in the beginning, he was employing techniques and doing the growing the way he had done in Cuba. Right. Didn't work out so well. So he had to rework and educate himself and experiment and figure things out. Today, it is the most advanced tobacco growing area in the world. Plasencias introduced drip irrigation to tobacco growing. First time in the world they did it. Okay. And what it did is increase their wrapper and their yield by 80%, using 60%, 70% less resource, because they were able to target with not only using the water they needed at the base of the plants, but they have sensors all over the fields, and they also titrate different nutrition and into the water so they can help bring the plant to full maturity under a certain amount of stress. And I mean, it's amazing what they're doing, how scientific it has gotten in these countries with regard to the growing is incredible. They have none of that in Cuba. None of it. We have geneticists on staff. We have all kinds of things creating hybrid. They don't have this in Cuba. They can't afford this in Cuba. They're still doing it the way they did back then. And unfortunately, they've overgrown on their soil. They've chemically damaged their soil. They are cutting every corner they can because they're broke. I was on another podcast. It was astounding to me what I heard. What was the European? These guys were all from Europe, and they were telling me that it's the official position now of Habanos SA that when they send boxes to European market to the stores, that you have to check the bottom of the box for the date, because if you got a box and it's within 6 months of the date of it's been boxed, you have to let it sit for 6 months before you should smoke it.
That's interesting. Okay, and that's because of the chemicals.
I inquired. I still got people in Cuba. And I was like, "Hey, is this true?" And they were like, "Oh yeah. We're pretty much putting the cigars in the box wet. They're not aging." Oh my
goodness, that's crazy.
They're not. They don't have the time. Time is money, right?
Yeah.
And they're broke, so they have to kick these cigars out as fast as they can. So apparently, they're rolling these cigars. They're letting them sit for 48, 72 hours, boxing them, and getting them out there, stamping them. They'd say people, well, you should let them age for about 6 months.
Right.
By the way,
crazy.
I want $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for this box of cigars. If I did that, I'd be out of business.
Right. But it's the mystique. And we've talked about this on the show many times. It's the mystique of the fact that it's a Cuban cigar, right? It's once I become the cigar czar, and Donnie and I have talked about this, so next week. Once I become the cigar czar and you can have Cuban cigars in America, this will change, because it's really Americans who don't have this luxury or don't want to order it online or don't go to Europe or don't go to Asia. They're like, oh my God, I've got XYZ. Okay, well, I was in Toronto during the week, and there's Cuban cigars all over the place, and they treat them just like we treat non-Cuban cigars. And that's what guy said, here, have a Monte Cristo. I'm like, thank you. So it's not a big deal to have a Cuban cigar or a non-Cuban. In America, it's just like, oh my God. But I think depending on what happens in Cuba over the next 6 months, because they have to repeal, I think it's the 98 Congressional Act that you can't deal with Cuba. Once that's repealed and Cuban cigars start flowing here like candy, then I think here the prices they'll come down. They're not going to be like they are in the United Kingdom, where it's like 300 pounds to smoke a stick, which is crazy. I think people will be like, oh, okay, they're a cigar. And I'm fortunate enough that I have acquaintances and friends, even though they have pterodactyl arms, that give me Cuban cigars to try and whatever. And when I travel, I smoke Cubans and non. And at the end of the day, they're wonderful. Part of it's the mystique in the history, and there's some of them are not as good as the non-Cubans. And I think it's for people that go, oh my God, it's like, once again, it's the mystique of it. We've built a marketplace where a box of Cuban cigars now will sell for $25,000. It's incredible. Like, okay, but it's to Riz's point it's just dried leaves. Now, granted, it's a special dried leaf, and it's this and it's that. But I think once an embargo drops, then I think the people that have been saving these boxes for 20 or 30 years, I think that sort of comes down. So
I agree. I just don't know if, as you said, if I necessarily agree with the whole price will drop thing.
Okay.
For a couple of reasons. One, we don't know what's going to happen with cigar production with Cuba once this whole thing happens. We just don't, because the denationalization is what's going to have to occur, privatization over there of certain aspects. Does the Cuban government privatize the cigar business? I have no idea what's going to happen there.
Right.
This is a whole ball of wax and yarn that we really don't know. So what could happen, and then at least initially, right? Because they're going to have to figure this whole thing out over time, and things will change. But I think initially, the supply will drop and the demand will go up. And I think as a matter of fact, I know right now their production right now is slowed. I mean, tremendously because of what's going on. So yes, there's stockpiles and there are plenty of Cuban cigars out there and everything else. But as they continue to get consumed, the production's not happening right now. So will there be a bottleneck of we don't have the supply, so the demand goes up? And Americans, by the way, and at least in the United States, it's something new. It's the novelty. So they may be willing to pay more than they would normally once they realize, as you say, it's just another cigar. So I don't know what's going to. We're going to have to see what happens here. It's going to be very interesting. Yeah. But the reality is, in Nicaragua, for example, because not only have we done all those things with the tobacco to bring the highest quality tobacco out there, and we have such a variety of different leaves that we grow there. But what we also have nowadays with new world cigars, as they're called, is we have the ability, and this is what I like to do. I blend with tobaccos from around the world. We have 16, 17 different countries that Plasencia buys tobacco from around the world. And I can utilize these tobaccos to blend the most exquisite products that otherwise prior to this, you couldn't do. Sumatran wrapper from Indonesia or Cameroon from Africa, fillers from Brazil, Paraguayan filler or binder, Dominican this, Mexican that, Colombian this. I mean, we have tobacco from everywhere. So what we're able to now create is so dynamic, and they continue to change, but so dynamic that I look at Cubans and I go, that's a Cuban, and that's a Cuban, and that's a Cuban, and they're very similar. As a matter of fact, I hate to burst bubbles, but sometimes it's even the same cigar with a different band on it. So we've joked about that with the guys who are like, I could tell a Cuban from a non-Cuban. I'm like, yeah, I bet you really can't. I mean, granted, if you're smoking like whatever constantly, it's like when I drink a certain scotch, I can tell you where the scotch is from the bottle because I've been drinking it for 100 years. If you're smoking one cigar every day for the last 30 years, yes, I bet you can tell me everything. However, if I lay out... Cuban tobacco has a very specific taste. If you're smoking it often, you recognize it, like you're saying. And that's that sweet cedar finish. If you're not getting that off a Cuban cigar, it's some degree. Some have more, some have less. But, and of course, the age and everything else. But if you're not getting that sweet cedar finish and aroma, it's a fake. That's a telltale sign. I'll tell that to everybody right now. And by the way, you can throw some Cuban in it and still get that, and it's not 100% Cuban, but at least there's Cuban tobacco in it. And that's the other, of course, ghost in the machine, right? Are Cuban cigars 100% Cuban tobacco? Some say yes, some say no. I'll never tell.
I was going to say, and here's the best part. For the Cuban, if you will, the government or however they want to run their little 27 factories, if you will, it's always going to be the mystique. So whether they privatize it, not privatize it or whatever, it'll always be the mystique of X. And to your point, you may smoke a non-Cuban and go, wow, this is just like XYZ. It's, at the end of the day, Nicaragua, there's no, it's not, but like I said, if it has just a hint and somebody doesn't really know, they're going to be like, oh, this is a Cuban. That's why I always joke with Rizzo when I come to London. I'm like, here, I'm going to give you a bunch of cigars. I want you to tell me what they are. I'm taking the bands off just to see. Now, I know some of the guys' palates, they can tell right off the bat. But to your point, if you put enough Cuban in there, can you really tell?
Yeah, you can't necessarily tell the brand, but you can tell where the tobacco's from. Like, for example, when I taste cigars that people blend all the time, they tell me, oh, smoke this. And I'll be like, Jalapa, Dominican Oro. I can tell the tobaccos. The brand, it's irrelevant because that's just the band. That's just this. The tobacco is the origin where it comes from. And like you said, if you smoke it enough, you can tell. It's almost like wine, being able to tell this is a Bordeaux region type of wine, right? Things of that nature. But I digress. The reality is this: we don't know what's going to happen in Cuba. What could happen is they could sell the farms, they could sell the factories, or they could sell the brands off. We don't know. By the way, who's going to buy them? Could be some of the tobacco families in all the other countries. Who knows? Could be the conglomerates. Could be Altanus. Could be General or Scandinavian Tobacco. We have no idea.
Yep.
Because the reality is all those brands were privately owned prior to the revolution.
Right.
So will that cause the mystique to go, or at least change? Because now it's being made by Swisher International.
Correct. It's not made by the guy driving the 57 Chevy that's scrounging for parts and some, girl that they schlep out 4 hours every day to go roll tobacco and come back. Now it's being, how do I put this? It's being commercialized. Even though it's commercialized, the commercialization today of the Cuban cigar is commercialized from 1950. And I think, once again, that's the mystique of a Cuban cigar. It is
What
not.
happens if, just for example, what happens if Scandinavian Tobacco buys Cohiba?
I think it won't have the mystique anymore. I think it'll be like, great. It's going to be like everything else that.
Well, by the way, they own Cohiba, non-Cuban, by the way.
Right.
So
Well,
now they own
and they lost the
Cohibas.
lawsuit. Right. Well, you lose a lawsuit, you got to own the other side of it. So, but I'm just saying, the Cohibas here, anyone who knows cigars knows it's not a real Cohiba, right? It just has the name. So great. Now you'll own the Cuban side of it. But once again, it's still now the mystique of it's a Cuban cigar is gone. Granted, it's the soy of the land, but it's not going to be a real, in some people's mind, in my mind, a real Cuban cigar anymore, because it's not going to have, it's not the old ways. The reason I think people like Cuban cigars, it's still made back in, like they made it, like, when Columbus came over, so to speak, and you go to Nicaragua and everything else, they still make it to an extent the old ways. However, it's a very different old way, right? With, like you said, we have modernization, we do this, we do that, blah, blah. And in Cuba, it's still, we still have the donkey pulling the cart. And I think that's part of the mystique to it.
It's the romanticizing of the old world, done the old way. The old way is better. I get it. And this is all psychological. It really is.
I agree with that.
The reality is that when I was going to the Cuban factories 25, 26 years ago, I was appalled at the conditions that they were working in and how they treated the tobacco. Absolutely appalled. I remember going in there and seeing, I was in the basement of the Partagas factory.
Right.
My aunt was one of the floor managers there at the time. And she walked me through the factory. So we started chronologically. The tobacco comes in through the basement, through a window kind of thing, from the truck, from the farms. And I walked into that basement and I was absolutely appalled at the filth and the condition of the people and how they were treating the tobacco and just the entire conditions, how it worked. We would call that a sweatshop in any other way, form. It was absolutely appalling. And then I walked through the rest of the factory and it didn't get any better.
Right.
It was horrendous. I understand there's the mystique. I understand that there's all this stuff. But the reality is, we do everything in Nicaragua, Honduras, and Dominican in these factories, and primarily owned by Cubans.
Right.
We do things the way they were done correctly before the revolution.
Right.
With the cleanliness and the organizational skills and the efficiency that was always run in those factories when they were privately owned.
Right.
What we have modernized is the science behind increasing the productivity and the yield and the flavor and the pest resistance of the tobacco.
Right.
That's the modernization. With regard to the making of the cigar, it's all the same. What we do have is better capability of temperature and humidity control. They don't have in Cuba because they can't afford it with the electricity and everything's old and everything else like that. So having said that, I don't care if you go to the Dominican Republic or Honduras or wherever you're going, all of these factories, the premier factories in the world for New World cigars, have these amenities that Cubans don't. What they don't have is that mystique. And it's it's a facade. It's really a facade.
And it's the Wizard of Oz.
But that isn't to say that I don't like some Cuban cigars. That's not to say
I get that. But I think it's like the Wizard of Oz, right? You pull the curtain back, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, to Riz's point, it's a dried leaf. And it's just, this one just happens to be made under these conditions, and this one happens to be made, and that's true. And they've marketed it very well.
Yeah,
And
for
one of the
generations,
guys,
it's been marketed as Cubans being the best, the best, the best,
right,
the
right,
best, the
right.
best. I mean, if you
Well,
drink
it's
the
the
Kool-Aid
same.
long enough, it's going to be the case.
Yeah,
You know,
and Rolls Royce is the best car because they tell you that,
that's
and
right.
people go, yes, it is. And is it? Probably not, but they tell you it's the best. It's the best. So you're like, of course it's the best. They said so. Whether it is or it isn't, it's debatable. Urs, who's actually a cigar collector, says the price for the old Cuban cigars after a possible takeover will explode.
Yeah.
And he's probably the old ones. I'm not talking about the new ones. I'm not talking about like what I'm going to get tomorrow, in a diplomatic pouch type of thing where I have to keep it now in my humidor for a year so I can actually enjoy it. But I'm thinking he's talking about cigars probably from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I think those he's referring to. They'll go, sure, because they'll be collectors.
Right. So history repeats itself. So actually what he's describing is exactly what happened after the revolution. Because everything went from private to government owned, right? So guess what all those private cigars that were made when they were owned by the original owners, guess what happened to all those cigars? The prices had to go through the roof because that was them now. Now it's this new government thing. So now it's going to happen again.
Gotcha. Well, you bring up an interesting point. If you go back, so in just say my family owned, which we didn't, but just say my family owned a cigar factory. Pick whatever.
It's like Zeno with Davidoff. What happened? He was in Cuba, and then they left.
So and then they're out. I'm just saying, but if you're part of, just say, the Juan Lopez family, right? And now all of a sudden they're going to go back to privatization. Well, in theory, I never sold my factory, my land, or anything. So you can make a case, and that's what I'm saying. Right? You have 27 families that are going to be like, excuse me. Grandma and grandpa started this, or grandma and grandpa were running it when you came and kicked us out. It's ours. So I think for this administration, when they're like, we want, and Mark Rubio we want the Cuban exiles to put money in, and then we wanted to do this and we wanted to do that. Calm down there, big guy. You got hotels that have been owned by the government that were owned by, if you will, the mob in the 60s, right? When they kicked the mob out. You've got land that was owned by other people. This was a hotel, everything. So you really are going to have to figure out how this looks before you go, come throw money in. Because I would hate to make an investment, whether it's in a cigar factory or a hotel, and then some family comes to me and goes, by the way, my grandmother and grandfather, blah, blah. And you'd be like, okay, so you got to kind of, I think, weigh through all of this. This is going to be not a overnight.
No, not at all. There's going to be a 10-point. There's a 10-point proposition right now, as to the things that need to happen, for more of American involvement and lowering of the embargo and this, that, and the other thing. The 10-point proposition, and I think most of them have a good chance of happening, but the one that I think is going to have the hardest time because of the time that's gone by, which is 67 years, by the way, is the reverting of properties and materials back to the original owners. That is one of those propositions. I think that's going to be the hardest because of the amount of time, because you're not talking about the owners anymore. Really, you're talking about the next generation, or in some cases, two generations going on. And the problem is that when a lot of these families left, all the documentation of ownership was either destroyed or they weren't able to keep it. However, there are some places that will have the history that you cannot deny, like the Bacardi building with the name Bacardi on it, still etched in the marble, right? So they can say, yeah, we owned it. But it's going to be a big fight. And again, we have no idea, because this would then be the Cuban courts. The Cuban courts, they're kangaroo courts right now. So, I mean, this whole thing, that's what I'm telling you. Nobody knows how any of this is going to go. This is going to be, for lack of a better word, a mess. But it's a mess that we have to go through to get to the other side, and for Cuba to become right again. And that's what I hope to be a part of. I hope to be a part of the rebuilding of not only the island, but my family's legacy that was once lost in Cuba. And by the way, my family was not just involved in tobacco. My family owned a number of businesses, a huge, for those of you that are familiar, or maybe Cubans from years ago, my family, one of the businesses that my family was owner of was Upina, the largest soft drink company on the island.
Wow.
That was one of their businesses. We were also involved in logging, We were also involved not only in tobacco. My great grandfather built an empire of real estate, and he owned like 8 square blocks of Pinar del Rio in the downtown area of the city. I mean, all of this was lost. Yeah. Am I ever going to be able to build that back myself, especially at my age? No. But I'd like to start the process.
Yeah,
that our family returns while my father's alive to see it. Yeah. And maybe he can take part in some of it as much as he'd like to. So
well, tomorrow,
talk about some of that romanticism and stuff.
Yeah.
I would like to see a return. Now, make no doubt about this. I'm going to say something that I hadn't previously. Other than being born in the United States, I served over 32 years in the United States Army. Nice. I'm an American. Right. But I am an American with Cuban heritage, and I was brought up to be very proud of where I'm from, which is the United States, but also being very proud of my family's heritage. So that said, I now see an opportunity like I had in the 90s to revive my family's legacy. I now see an opportunity to revive my family's larger legacy.
Very cool.
And so I'd like to try to take advantage of that. And after we talk tomorrow, maybe you can be a part of it.
Oh, we'll see. That's why we're having a meeting. And little pterodactyl arms is going to try to reach into his pocket at Capitol Grill.
Well, he's going to love you tomorrow.
Oh, if he loves me, you'll see. I told him, I said, before David comes on the show, you need to warn him about it. He goes, well, he saw the short you did him, and he said you called him a masturbator. He says, I think he has a good idea of what he's walking into. I'm like, all right, good enough. But let me ask you this then. So Tell everybody where they can get your cigars. That's, I think, the first thing. And I think that's important because, we want to promote. I will say, though, I like the fact, and I know Trump will, because Donnie watches the show all the time and texts us while we're on the air. I know that the fact that you say I'm an American first, but I want my heritage and I'm Cuban. I think that's also for people that are like, oh, he's Cuban, yada, yada. No, you made it pretty clear. 32 years in the military. I'm a Cuban American or an American Cuban, depending if you want to do it alphabetically. And that's it. And I think, to your point, the fact that people can go and help now the country go back to, for lack of a term, its former glory, could be, I think a lot of people are going to be involved in that. And I think it's just going to be a matter of, do they do it right, or they do it like it was done in Russia? Is it just going to be a land grab? And I think that's what has to kind of be worked out with not just people like you, but with the government that's going to then be in charge, whether it's Raul and whoever, or it's a new government or a new this. I think that needs to be worked out. Like, are we going to do this orderly, or, to your point, my family owned X, Y, and Z, we can prove it. Does that family get the opportunity now to come and rebuild? So I think there are a few things that we guys that are looking at, hey, let's go there and do something. I think those are the big questions that have to be answered.
So it's already happening.
Okay, good.
It's already happening. But I'll answer your question in the order in which you asked it. So to find my cigars for your international audience is a good question. And the reason I say that is because we have distribution in Europe, but I have a distributor in each country. And I will say that since the EU implemented their registration issues, we have had a contraction for our availability to sell our products, because not every country has re-registered our product, because it's a nightmare. They're still figuring things out. But I know we still have our cigars at this moment in Holland. So you can find them in shops in Holland. We used to be in almost every store in Holland. I don't know right now because my distributor is responsible for that. We are also available in Switzerland. We send a lot of in Switzerland through our distributor there. I know he's there. We used to be available, and I don't know if he still has any, in Germany, Tobacco World, with Mark Benden in Dusseldorf was our distributor there. So, and he's like the biggest guy in Germany. So Germany, that's where you would find our cigars. Belgium, I don't know if they have any left. So I could say these places. France, we had a distributor, but I don't know if these guys still have any inventory, because I haven't sold them anything recently, but they still might have inventory in shops around the country. So to say exactly in Europe where I have stuff, I don't know exactly right now. All I can tell you is we're not currently shipping to a lot of those countries until the EU registration thing is finalized. We're also in Lebanon. If you're in Lebanon, we distribute in Lebanon. We're in the Congo. I mean, we're all over the place. I just don't know right now their inventory.
How about Dubai?
States. What's that?
You in Dubai, UAE, Dubai?
No, we're not. We're not in Dubai and in Saudi Arabia and all those places.
Okay.
As you know, Saudi Arabia doubled the tax, and when
Right.
that happened, we were in negotiations and talking to somebody right now. But the reality is, they buy so small to begin with.
Right.
I can't really talk out of school. Let's just say
Let's just say that. Yeah.
we might have cigars in Dubai and all these places. I'm not for
Right.
certain. You'd have to ask my Lebanese distributor, if you know what I mean.
There you go. Wink, wink. There you go, guys.
Gray market, right? Gray market.
Right. All right.
So we're in Asia, we're in Malaysia and stuff like that.
Okay.
Vietnam, we have. So we're all over the place. Canada,
Right.
United States, we're all over. If you go to your local shop and you don't find Blanco cigars and you'd like them there, ask for us by name. Generally, what happens is, we call this guerrilla marketing, by the way.
Yeah.
When a customer asks for a product by name, the retailer will generally at least look into it and possibly bring it in, especially if this is a regular customer. So if you'd like to try our cigars and you can't find them, you can do that. The other option is to find us online. We sell to some of the people online that also have brick and mortars, because that's the only people we sell to online. Or as long as I have a brick and mortar shop, I don't sell the CI anymore. I don't sell the Famous anymore. I don't sell the JR. These guys are just big warehouses type thing, and they undercut brick and mortar and family shops, mom and pop shops, and that's not who we are. We are a relationship based B2B business, and the internet guys are just, in my humble opinion, destroying this industry. That being said, there are some guys on the internet that sell our stuff, and if that fails, you can go to blancocigars.com. We have our own MSRP web store.
Oh, there
so
you
you
go.
can buy from us directly if, in fact, you don't have a shop in your area, or you don't see a product on some of these internet guys who prefer a very specific product from us. Not all of them carry everything I make. I have 7 different brands and 8 sizes in this and 6 sizes in that and 4 sizes. Not every shop is going to carry everything I make. Some prefer this versus that. So if you wanted the full gamut to find out what we have, go to blancocigars.com and you can take a look at our entire portfolio, and you can see all the sizes. And if they're in stock, you can buy them directly from us and we'll ship them to you.
And David does weddings and bar mitzvahs too. So it's always good to have them.
Memorial weekends.
Who isn't? So let me ask you this before we let you go.
That's what you think this is for.
I know, right? And people think it's for cigars. They don't know. So let me ask you this. In Ybor City, if I'm in Ybor City and I want to buy a Blanco cigar, where am I going?
You're going to go to King Corona.
Okay.
Now, whether or not he's got him on the shelf right now, I don't know. I'm going to have to check, but he's the guy that we sell to in Ybor City.
Okay. And for you people, Ybor City is in Tampa. It's a wonderful stroll back in time. It's great.
I don't know, but Odalma may also have some. I haven't. Okay. I got to see what she's. Odalma, that's what Odalma's her name. It's the lady who owns the shop down there who also manufactures. What is wrong? It's the Egyptian name.
La Ferrona?
La Ferrona.
I love you. You're welcome. I love her stuff. I smoke her double Corona quad. That's one of my favorites that she makes.
So what's funny is real quick story, just to get off topic with her real quick. I was really touched. And quite frankly, I didn't make a deal about this, but she does it when I walk in there. She introduced me. I said hello. I wanted to go visit her, and the first thing out of her mouth was, "They gave me my first job." When she came here from the United States 15 years ago,
right,
when my father was still president and I was the vice president,
right,
we were the first ones to hire her to do rolling events.
Nice.
Before she got in the shop.
Yeah. And
so I was taken aback that was the first thing out of her mouth was, "They gave me my first job. I love these people. And I was like, wow. And it was very touching. And so Odalma has a special place in our heart. We are so happy to see the amount of success that she has right now. And for her to say that they're the ones that gave me a shot and helped me get on my feet when I first came here to this country, it makes me feel warm. I'm very happy.
Very nice.
She's a very nice lady.
Well, and big shout out to her. Her cigars are wonderful. So they're wonderful. And let me just say, tomorrow we're going to introduce you, depending if he's there, a guy named John. He's 84, originally from Cuba. And Ben heard this story as well. And I wasn't drinking my scotch because it was 9 a.m, maybe. And John was telling us that his mother used to roll cigars for Winston Churchill. So if he's there, we can have, because of your lineage and history in the stories, if John's there, like I told Ben, if we get you two together the first hour or two tomorrow, we may actually record it, but that's like real history. So that'll be a very interesting meeting in the morning. So, and then, I don't know if Ben tells you, we start around 9:30 and we end around 3:30. So it's a full day. So
yeah, he told me 10 o'clock we were meeting. Is that okay?
Ben drinks a lot. He doesn't know. We'll be there at 9:30. We have to be there at 9:30. Listen, it's the little arms. You can't reach the clock and change the times. It's just how it works. And Ben knows I love him like the sister I never had. So, it's just the way it works. We're definitely looking forward to meeting you. I know there's a group showing up tomorrow, so it'll be cigars and scotch, and then we're all going to Capitol Grill for lunch. And we're going to continue our dialogue from there. So it'll be a fun thing. Guys, if no one has more questions, Urs, thank you for your input. Urs is a regular. He's been on the show many times for the fans that know him. David, thank you for coming on. I greatly appreciate it. I'm glad Rudy didn't make you sick this time. Thank you. And you're more than welcome to come whenever you would like. We always enjoy having people that know more than us, which isn't that hard. Just saying. It's not really, it's not that tough. But no, it's always good to have someone like you. And I know there's tons more we can talk about, but I think the other subjects we want to go down, I would want Riza here, because on some of it, he's more the expert. I'm just the good looking one, and nobody comment on that. I swear to God. And we'll go through that, and then we can go from there. So everybody, don't forget to subscribe and like. Don't forget to catch us next Saturday live, and wherever you get your podcasts. This will be out tomorrow morning. And that's it. David, thank you. It was a pleasure. I'll see you tomorrow, everybody. We'll see you next week. Cheers, everybody.
Stay smoky.